Hey everybody, my name is Tim, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another tutorial where I'm going to be explaining how to use the RBD Procedural in Houdini 20.5. This is my first video in a long time, so there's going to be a timestamp to skip over sort of this intro part where I'm explaining why I was gone in case you missed all the social media posts about it. Just going to do a quick introduction, so click that if you don't just want to see the tutorial. Anyway, I've been away for a while. Some of you that followed me on social media knew that I had a problem with my hand and wrist, which sort of has taken like now over a year to sort of heal, and it's finally getting to a point where it doesn't really bother me that much anymore. It's still there, but I can work around it. Essentially, what it turned out to be is that I have sort of tendonitis in my thumb tendon, which is sort of the thing here, and there's a sheath in the tendon, which, so if the tendon gets affected really bad, it also affects the sheath, and then because you sort of start to overcompensate with that sort of fucked up my my wrist, and then that fucked up the rest of my arm, and that essentially goes all the way through, and that ended up with me essentially not being able to work for like a couple of months last year, having to wear like a mitella, or do you ever call it, carrying your hand in a thing. So that was not good. So started working again earlier this year, and I had to sort of compartmentalize either like doing the client work, because I was on a bigger project from December until May. So I really needed to, I was working 4 days a week, which was manageable with the hand, and I couldn't really do the YouTube stuff on the side. But in the meantime, I've done a lot of physiotherapist stuff there. I've had MRIs done of this whole thing to see if there was not a bigger, like another issue going on. But it's gotten to a point where I can actually, I can work for the most part again. I cannot use like a mouse for a prolonged period, so I am still using the Wacom. Like as long as I keep my wrist straight, I can do pretty much anything. So I can lift again as well, which is nice. As long as I keep my wrist straight. So I cannot do bench press, but I can use dumbbells, so I can keep them like this. Bunch of stuff like that. Anyway, so I am making videos again. And yeah, I am actually working on a sort of a large course, which is around rigid body. So essentially it's going to be 3-part course. One is going to be procedural modeling a wooden cabin. The center part is going to be the sort of the FX part, which is centered around rigid bodies and some other effects. I would just like, I just want to tease it a little bit with something with a tornado breaking up a house, which is going to be cool. And then later we're going to render everything in Karma XPU. So anyway, I was working on that, and then I wanted to use the new RBD Procedural, which is a new thing in 20.5, and it's you would think it would be very straightforward to use. I went through the help file. I tried it for a bunch of times, and I couldn't get it to work. So I asked on Discord, and there was this guy on Discord, Obeda. He pointed me to another article, which I don't really understand why this is not the default thing that it links to if you open up the help file, because this is already a lot more helpful. If you open up the standard help file, you get this thing. And this is a very small article, which I followed. It's roughly the same information, but I couldn't get it to work. So I figured now I have it to work, and I have tried it out on like on a bigger scene as well. So I'm comfortable that it works fine. So like here is my sort of crash test that I did for like the course that I'm working on, which again was rendered sort of use the RBD Procedural sort of to get that through, to speed up the renders quite a lot. So yeah, everything works fine, both on the smaller test scene that I did and on a bigger one. So I figured, well, everything works now, I might as well make a video about it in case anybody else runs into this. So yeah, how to use the RBD Procedural? Well, essentially, first of all, what is a RBD Procedural? Effectively, it's kind of similar to the transform pieces that you have here, which essentially takes a sort of a static input. So here we have the pick. Then, for example, it will take these points that I've simulated out. So you take a rest position here with a time shift, and then it will sort of transform it like this. So kind of the RBD procedural will kind of do similar things. You can see I have a big head here, and then here we're sort of transforming it like this. Cool thing here though is that, so now it's turned on with preview procedural, which is essentially what you're going to do if you're going to preview it in the viewport. But you might imagine if you have very big rigid body scenes with many millions of pieces, you might not want to preview it, at least not the entire time. So you can actually turn it off. And then once you render this to disk, so if I turn on like a Karma CPU now, it's not gonna really do anything. It's gonna just show the static mesh. But if you render this to disk, so if you throw this on the farm or whatever, it's gonna actually render the high resolution geometry that you put in there. So it's super useful way to speed it up. And here's a sort of example of this working on like my house thing. So let me. So you can see here's the thing. So we just have this house loaded in, sort of split it up into a couple of subsets for shading. Aside from that, I'm just using one sort of thing, and you can see here it's relatively fast to scrub through, even though this is it's quite a heavy sim. And you can see I'm just directly loading this from cache. And again, if I turn off the procedural, it will still render. So then if you just have it like this, you can just work like that. So let's get into sort of how this works. There's a couple of parts in this that make it work, which was a little bit confusing to me. So first, the main thing that you need is, let me just split my view here, so it's going to be a little bit easier to sort of show both SOP stuff and other stuff. So normally, like let's say if I SOP import something, let's say I fracture this, let's say I have this big fractured, and I load it in like that, which is a regular SOP import. I load it in like this. You see it comes in here as a SOP import with a pig under it. But if we have a, so if I have it, if I'm loading it as packed, sorry, I wanted to load that one. You see it comes in with all of these individual pieces, which is sort of fine if you have sort of a, just one sort of small thing like this. But let me show you how slow that can get if you just do it on a high resolution. All right, so here I have this bigger house, which again, you can see it's 26,545 different parts. So if I check my Solaris view, and let's say I load it in there. All right. All right, there you go. You can see it's gonna very slowly sort of build up because it's doing sort of all these instances. There's multiple ways that you can sort of set this up to load. Yeah, it's really slowing down. All right. Right, so I think on the primitive definition, so you can also, if you put it to point instancer, it's going to be a little faster, but it's still going to be slow. So you kind of get the point. It's not necessarily ideal because it's kind of gonna sort of, when it's gonna load it like this, it's gonna sort of try to rebuild this tree the entire time, which is, so the way I'm actually loading it here is just with this SOP import. You see, this is quite fast, so it just loads it sort of as a, just as one thing here, and I get a couple of sort of subsets here that I've generated for shading to sort of, essentially it's my shading groups kind of. All right, so you can see this is a lot faster. So we need to create a path in order to do this, and then from there we can sort of transform it with the procedural, right? So if you're gonna load, let's say if you have an Alembic from another program, let's say you get a model from Maya or whatever, it's gonna have these Alembic paths in it. You might need to reconfigure them, but it kind of depends on how you're gonna shade this. But in this case, like I didn't have a path, so I'm gonna configure a path. So I'm gonna create an attribute. So just with a attribute create, I'm just gonna do like that, and you essentially put it to, let me go out of this. So essentially you put it to primitive. You want a primitive attribute, you want it to be string, and you're gonna say path, and in this case we're gonna say /pig, I think. Let's see what I had before. So essentially that's how you create it. I'm just gonna undo it so at least it works on the other one. So you can see here, oh sorry, all the way around. So name path, because the attribute needs to be called path, and then the string is going to be pig. So you're going to see we're going to get an attribute here, path called pig. So then you're going to do your, you're going to just have your rigid body simulation. So I'm just going to material factor it, constraint properties, RBD configure. And then here we need to make sure that before we do the simulation, that our path attribute is promoted from primitive to point, because we're gonna have a bullet simulation, and we're gonna load these points afterwards. And of course, points are just points; they don't have a primitive in them. So you need to make sure that you promote it. So if you then do your simulation, I'm doing here, so pig falling down, then they will have this attribute path on the points. So this is important, because kind of what we're going to be doing is we're going to be configuring these points here to sort of point to our pieces in the in this network. So there's a couple of other things. So here, sort of, I essentially changed the path a little bit, because let's say you want to create a little bit of a hierarchy in your shading tree. For example, you could write something like asset path, so Solaris will pick up on that. So /scene/path. So again, I could also /scene/cheese, and then we see it will be, oh, and I need to do an extra slash. You can see then it would be sort of like that. So essentially just creating a path. So the path attribute here will essentially be how your geometry is loaded. Then we need to make sure that you sort of change your name attribute, and you call it piece name. The reason being, it lists this in the help file as well. Oh, and now it crashed. All right, I'm back. So it mentions here that the user name won't work as it's internally used by the procedural. I'm not sure why they're doing it like this. I would think they could just, like, I don't understand why they just don't build it in here to rename name to piece name. Maybe, I guess, to get people used to doing it. It's just something like, I'm not sure why they don't just automate it in the procedural. But what you need to do is you need to essentially move. So essentially here we have the name is going to be on here. It's going to be name piece, and we can either attribute rename or attribute swap. So you see, like what I'm doing here is I'm just moving it. You can also copy it, swap it. You can do whatever from name to piece name. So now my name attribute of all of these individual pieces is called piece name instead. I'm just deleting some grooms, deleting some attributes that I don't really need. Yeah, and I'm just not like deleting all of the other attributes, just keeping the path, piece name, and normal. All right. So if you load that in, it will essentially just bring it in as the path that you generated here. Right. And the second part that you need to do is you need to kind of then give when you have your points that we written out over here. So if you have your rigid body solver, on the last point you have the simulation point. Sort of, if you load it back in here, so if you write it to disk, you can just do it like this. Or if you use the RBD IO, you can also use that one. So that's used for RBD stuff. You can plug everything in there You can say simulation points, and it will essentially just cache the simulation points as well. And it kind of just depends how you want to approach this. So you cache out these points. Then in here I have a wrangle. So again, we need to assign a similar name because we renamed our name to piece name there. Essentially, we want to point the piece name here to the path that we just created. So we want to point it to /scene/pig/piece name. So we're gonna have piece name here /scene, /scene, because that was the base thing that we also added here. We're gonna put it to +path. So we're gonna add the path to it as well. So if we let's check just the piece name, right? We're gonna get /scene/pig/piece name. So it's gonna point it to this pig, and then it's gonna point it to the individual piece name that's in here. And then if you we can set up our new RBD procedural just to show it. Put your RBD procedural. And we're going to point it to a specific point stop. So we're going to plug it in there. And you can see now it works. And you can you can give it a name where you want your points to end up. You're just doing this for preview. I highly suggest that if you're going to do this, to cache out your points with this attribute on there. So something like this, where you would just save them out with the attribute on there. You can put the file. You can go to the file cache. We can go to this path. Just paste it in there, and now it's going to load it directly from disk. Now, if I switch back and forth here, you might not really notice the difference. But if I do this on my heavier thing, so if I have it on here, you can see it's pretty fast. If I put this to primitive, you can see here on the downstairs is gonna sort of cache it to stage, which takes forever. So let me cancel out of this. You don't want to do that. Just cache them out to points. It's fine for a low resolution thing, but preferably just cache them out to points. Set it up like this. It's gonna be a lot faster. And then you essentially you just have it working, and then you just you just render. And again, if you turn off preview procedural, it will not show in the viewport. But let me just demonstrate. If I render this out with Karma to something like that's fine. XPU, let's say 60 frames, render to disk, all frames single process. Oh yeah, of course I don't have a camera because I didn't have this set up for. Right, let me just make an extra camera here. All right, you know what? Let's just make a camera in Solaris. Camera. All right, let's do RAM. Right, here we go. All right, now we should be able to render it. Camera 1. All right, there we go. Render. All right, so that's finished rendering, and then as you can see, it works. Magnificent. So the file for this will be in the description. Make sure to like this video if you liked it. Make sure to dislike it if you disliked it. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos. Let me know if you want to see something specific. Again, I'm just working on this bigger course now, which is going to come out later this year. I might still do some things for YouTube as well. If I know what, I've been kind of out of ideas. I wanted to do a video about NPM, but NPM is pretty straightforward. So I didn't really know what to do about it because it's really easy to set up. So, but might be interesting to do something with it. Who knows? Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video and see you in the next one. Peace.